Welcome back to Business AM with me, Irungu, the last segment of the show, and we are having a sit-down conversation with Irungu, who's the CEO of Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit, and he's big on social entrepreneurship, and he says it's the key to social transformation. Now, before we start the conversation, just to lay into context what we want to talk about, only 10 out of 100 ideas survive to implementation stage, okay, and only 3 out of 5 SMEs make it beyond their 3rd birthday. Now, beyond their 3rd birthday, only 1 makes it to their 5th birthday. And we want to have a conversation around this and see how we can harness the power of social enterprises and small and medium enterprises so that they can grow, create jobs, and help transform the Kenyan economy. Thank you very much, Irungu, for making time.
Thank you so much.
Just to start the conversation, from where you sit, inside-out perspective, what is the state of social entrepreneurship in the country?
Thank you so much for having me in the show. First of all, is to say social entrepreneurship is on the rise. It is on demand. Of course, it's one of the things that is really changing in the lives of people in communities. The stakeholders, the government, the players, the enablers, the incubators are also on the rise to support social entrepreneurship. And of course, as a global priority in terms of the sustainable development goals, then we have to move in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are some of the needs in the society that are pushing towards social entrepreneurship? Is there a need for social entrepreneurship, and maybe what problem is social entrepreneurship providing solutions to?
First of all, I would like to bring to the attention of the viewer of what is this difference between the conventional business and the social enterprise. Mm-hmm. A social enterprise really puts the people or the communities at the heart of the design program. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're designing for a mainstream business, we are focusing on profit, margins, and growth. Not to say that a social entrepreneur will not focus on profits, but they will have the people at the heart. The bigger goal of a social enterprise is social change. Mm-hmm. And coming to your question, when you are talking about what the social enterprises are doing, they are really now transforming the challenges that are facing communities into an enterprise. Mm-hmm. And basically that's now in terms of health, agriculture, education, energy, in all the fields of sustainable development. Mm-hmm. We have social entrepreneurs focusing on growing social enterprises that are increasing or improving the lives of people in those sectors.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying the need of the society is triggering the rise of social entrepreneurship to provide solutions to the challenges that normal people face on a normal basis.
Exactly. Like now we are talking about, we have had a drought season when we have had so many people dying. Mm-hmm. Now we are now dealing with the floods, so a social challenge. So now the social entrepreneurs are coming in to ask themselves, like, we have had drought. How do we improve resilience of communities to deal with the hunger, for example? Mm-hmm. So they are talking about enhancing food security at household level through social businesses. That is now where they're talking about enhancing the production, to talk about the value addition, talk about preventive against diseases that are affecting the crops. Mm-hmm. that are resilient to drought. So social entrepreneurs come in handy to deal with the social challenges that we face day to day. And then at the same time, they also have to be sustainable. It's not a humanitarian aspect as per the humanitarian world. The social entrepreneurs come in to think of ideas, creative and innovative ideas that are sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Very well. Now, I want us to talk about some of the measures that are being put in place to grow social entrepreneurship, because we know that most businesses do not survive beyond their 3rd birthday, and it's a miracle if they go beyond their 5th birthday. And their incubation centers. Last year, we were together at the Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit that was held at the Kenyatta University. And the Kenyatta University has the Manichandara Incubation Center, but that's just one, okay? So as we start talking about incubation center, what role does incubation centers play in the growth of a business? Before you start, allow me to borrow your pen.
Thank
Great,
you so
okay.
So let me come into how the ecosystem look like. When we are talking about social entrepreneurship and also the SMEs, we are having an ecosystem that has accelerators, enablers. For instance, for us, we are enabler. EmpServe as an enabler, it's an NGO that focuses on the grassroots incubations. In Nairobi itself, we have over 50 hubs or innovation hubs that are existing to support young and upcoming entrepreneurs. But at the same time, there is also now the quest of asking ourselves, these young entrepreneurs are designing solutions for communities that are not only in Nairobi.
Okay.
So the focus now has been, how do the ecosystem support them that are now at the grassroots level, at the county level, at the far away from the town. So the ecosystem now focuses on providing solution in terms of incubating ideas. Basically, when we are designing ideas, we understand the challenge that a startup will go through. The same challenges the young startups and the social enterprise end will still go through the same challenges. So the enablers, the incubators, the accelerators come in to try and support the ecosystem and the young entrepreneurs to the point that they are able to test the ideas, they are able to pilot the ideas, they are able to make a case, be able even to face out with the venture funds and such that comes in the growth stage.
So, how do we increase incubation hubs and how do we equip them so that they're better placed to help SMEs, particularly in the social entrepreneurship sector, to grow?
On this note, we have to really demystify what is the purpose of an accelerator, what is the purpose of an incubator. And in this note, what challenge we have faced, for instance, as an enabler in the space, we have space like this hall, but the utilization by the young entrepreneurs is not on the trend. So the question we ask ourselves: what is the problem that is making these young people not able even to utilize the available resources? And on that note, you'll find whatever incubation centers that we have set in place, they have quite a bit of demands. Like, have you proven your case? And for me, and my understanding is, I don't have to prove the case. I need the incubator to support me to prove the case. So I think it is the high time, and that is the conversation we have been pulling together, even doing the Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit, trying to push now the voice of the young entrepreneur to the table, and now letting the enablers listen to them. And that's now some of the cries that you listen and find out. That it's the high time now we also think about. I don't have to come all the way from Garissa, for example. I am designing a solution for Garissa County, and then I travel all the way to Nairobi to devise the solution. The counties, the enablers need to have a way of having a devolved function around incubation and acceleration processes to be able to support young entrepreneurs from where they are. That is why we have upcoming colleges in every different region. We have to take advantage of the systems just to be able to have more and more of such enabling environment within the sub-regions that we have in the country.
Funding. One of the biggest challenges of entrepreneurs across the board, but in relation to social entrepreneurship, because you're trying to find solutions, funding is very critical. How do we go about it in relation to sourcing for more funds and making funds available to people in the social entrepreneurship space and giving them time? Because projects, when they're not based on profit, do not pick up immediately. And maybe they might not even be of profit immediately.
Let me first of all put this into perspective. Just to say, a social enterprise really suffers on the fact that there is no, like say the financial institutions, like the banks, that are out there looking for social enterprises to give them funding based on the fact that their biggest interest is social impact and profit comes second. That a little bit brings a bit of a comparison looking at what happens now in the mainstream business, where you have to prove the point that you're able to make profits and the margins, and then you get some amount. That puts them in an awkward situation. And now within that ecosystem, that is now where we have the venture funding coming in, but at the same time, it's a challenge for an upcoming social entrepreneur who needs to prove the case. And now that calls for alternative funding. What is the alternative funding in the space? That is now what we are championing for, because we are asking ourselves, for you to get funding, for anyone to support your idea, they really need to see it happening. They really need to see that impact. They really want to see the sustainability model. Like, you have to prove the case. At the same time, we also need to raise the leaders who are supporting these social businesses to be able to speak about the case. Because the proponent of a business or a social enterprise has like three facets. We have to look at the enterprise itself. You cannot separate the social enterprise with the social entrepreneur. At the same time, we also have to look at the community, or the persons, the focus, the customer in this context. How do these three facets interact? How do we strengthen the model to be able to be beyond reproach? And then that will also now call even the mainstream funding to come in to support such startups. But then, do we have such patient funding? For example, you need to have a fund for 3 years before you are able to have a profit margin. So then that brings a bit of question, which are the other funding? And of course, we have the development organizations that now have been coming in, breaking down their funding to be able to get to the grassroots, to be able to support the very early stage young social enterprises.
Nice. So they have funding. If we can get alternative means of funding that are more patient with social entrepreneurs, what other ways can we use to unlock the potential of social entrepreneurship and churn new paths for them, particularly when they're in their early stage of startups?
Basically, we also need to focus on growing the leader in the social enterprise. I think what we have seen even within the ecosystem, the startups that have grown very fast have grown out of the leadership of the founders and the skill composition. Like, some of the biggest challenges we face around social entrepreneurship is the mix of the skills. For us, what we have always done in the young entrepreneurs that we support, we always ask you, what skills do you have to drive the social enterprise? What is the team composition, for instance? I've seen, for instance, a young entrepreneur who is interested in a digital startup, but then they don't have the skill. So they want somebody to support them to develop this digital system. But then you ask them, how do you sustain this? Who would you team up? Would you look for a co-founder, for example, to be able to support your startup? So there are other factors that enablers can be doing in terms of giving them a vision, understanding the market. When we are talking about the market, it still applies even within the ecosystem of social entrepreneurship, because we are focusing on, does this make sense to the community? Does it make sense at all? What about the market analysis? What bringing the users? This is what we call the human-centered design thinking. Like, how do you bring the users at the center of your development? How do you get feedback? Is the innovation, is the startup that you are running appropriate at this stage? So there are other details enablers can be doing in terms of supporting the young entrepreneurs, giving them a strategy plan. How do they work on their strategy? How do they work on their clientele? How do they work on the communities? How do they place the people at the center of their design thinking? At the same time, how do they sharpen? How do they hone their skills around the social enterprise that they are driving? How do they compose the team if they miss the skill? Those are some of the details that we work around, and that is now some of the things that the enablers within the ecosystem would be doing to support the enterprise.
Now, a young social entrepreneur might be watching, and maybe their business is not doing really well. There might be a mistake they're making somewhere. So just to contextualize, what are some of the common mistakes that social entrepreneurs make in their journey?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I have mentioned a number of them. And the biggest mistake, according to me, is their market orientation, their market analysis, their target. Sometimes even the timing. There's something that is interesting. For instance, just to give a very good example, we had the digital cards that were introduced by the government. And it looks like an amazing startup. A very nice social enterprise because they are really solving a big problem of corruption. They were dealing with efficiency and speed. But to me, the market was not ready for the startup. So, and it still applies to the young startups who are in the market, in the communities, driving social change, because social entrepreneurs are really passionate about what they do and they believe in what they have to transform. But then, do they have the people? Again, the human-centered approach. How do they put the people at the center? So you'll find that a young entrepreneur, a young social entrepreneur, will not do quite a bit of market research, especially in the social entrepreneurship, because they believe in the change as opposed to the process. So they have seen the end result. They have seen a place with the lower mortality rate as opposed to how will I do the process. So the social entrepreneur looks at the change and then forgets of the process. How do you put the people who you are designing the solution for at the center of your process? So that is one of the biggest mistakes. I've mentioned something to do with the composition, the skills.
Yeah, the skill set.
No, the skill set. It's not about the money. It's not about the capital, because you'll find them, they'll tell you, I just don't have money to do the thing. But then you ask them, some of the resources that you need is just a skill to develop the tech innovation that you are doing. How do you do your team composition? So those are some of the things that you'll find. They don't have even a strategy. So a young entrepreneur out there, you have to design a strategy. Like, what do I want to achieve in the next 2 years? What do you want to achieve in the next 5 years? So I need to see, what is your strategy plan? What is the starting point? You know, and a social entrepreneur start with empathizing with the community, which is the human-centered design approach, where you empathize with the communities. You are going to pilot or test within a specific period of time. Then at the same time, you need to say, what is your scaling plan?
Okay.
What is the other market? Which other communities are going through the same challenges or that need the same solution that you are having? So they need to do also a strategy of the growth and the scaling plan. So those are some of the quick mistakes that young entrepreneurs will make, especially in the social business aspect.
Okay. Now, social entrepreneurship is a good thing from how you put it, because it solves people's problems. But I want you to talk to us about the tangible results from where you sit that you've seen social entrepreneurship bring on the table and the kind of impact it has had on the society. Do you know of such cases that you could tell the viewer?
Yeah, so basically, let me start with Nairobi here, where we used to have Kanjo toilets. It was very hard for you to go to a washroom within Nairobi. But then what happened? A young social entrepreneur looked at the situation, felt the situation is bad. We have the resource, we have the space, we have the toilets, but they are not usable. So what did the social entrepreneur do? He went and did a bargain and asked, would I transform the toilets to usable? I'll make an M-Pesa there, I will do some other revenue channels, and I will charge the person maybe 5 shillings. And then the users were happy because it comes at a cost, but it is efficient. So it is transformed the whole situation around Nairobi. Nowadays, you don't worry when you're walking around Nairobi. So that's just a quick example, like for the ones who are in Nairobi. Look at the health, for example. We have young people who are transforming the health sector through reaching out to communities through the digital device, like through education and health. Look at even the payments that we are doing now currently. People have devised simpler methods of doing the payments and such. So we have the social enterprise at heart of transformation. Again, social entrepreneurship places that at a national and a global competitive edge, because the whole globe is guided by the Sustainable Development Goals. And when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, it is now upon us as a nation to have our subsectors that are still addressing the same. Now the social entrepreneurs picks the pieces and composes solutions in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay. So when you are talking of the national priorities, in line with the global priorities, the social entrepreneur becomes the driver. So that is where I place the social entrepreneur.
Okay, so you from the Global Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit, briefly before we let you go, what does it entail and what does it do?
So basically, the Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit has been brought forward by EmpServe Kenya, which is a youth-led organization that works towards empowering the young people and towards social entrepreneurship. The reason why we came up with the Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit is we realized that there is the Global Entrepreneurship Summit that really focuses on the big players in the market. And when we are talking about the Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit, it's like the opposite, that now gives the voice of young and upcoming entrepreneurs to have a conversation and pass out the message to the players and enablers in the ecosystem. So it's an annual event. It happens, we did the first one in 2018. We'll still be doing another one this year in September. And the key focus this time round will be how do we engage young women in social entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Because at the same time, it also gives the voice of the ones that are disenfranchised, the ones that have been left behind. By the end of it all, we say no one should be left behind. We are also bringing out their voices to be heard and documenting the voices of the young entrepreneurs. So we are focusing on bringing out the players out here, the government, the NGOs, the private sector, the incubators, the accelerators, the venture funds, just to have a conversation, listen to the young entrepreneurs, and by the end of it all, we devise new means and new strategies to improve the ecosystem.
Thank you very much for making time. And thank you for allowing me to borrow your pen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you have it, Martin Irungu from EmpServe, which is the founders of Grassroots Entrepreneurship Summit. And for them, the key focus is social entrepreneurship for social transformation, creating solutions to real-time problems that Kenyans are facing. We've come to the end of the show and would like to say a big thank you to you for staying tuned from 7 to 9. We do not take it for granted. We thank you for your feedback. On behalf of the whole team that made it a success, from the producer Stephen Kimani Gitao to the director Stephen Audi, we want to say a big thank you once again. We'll see you again next time. God bless you and keep it Matropol TV.